Story 1. The Shadow in the Closet. I never thought a simple sleepover would turn into the worst night of my life. It was supposed to be fun, just me, Lucas, and Danny hanging out at Lucas's house while his parents were away for the weekend. We had done this dozens of times before, but this night was different. Lucas's house was an old colonial-style home at the edge of town, backed up against a thick patch of woods. It was one of those houses that always creaked and groaned, the kind where the plumbing made weird noises and the floors settled at night. Lucas's older brother, Jake, was home, but he didn't care what we did. He was 17, had his own car, and was way too cool to be bothered by a bunch of 14-year-olds. We had everything planned out: video games, junk food, scary movies, and an all-nighter. None of us knew that someone, or something, was watching us the whole time. It started around 11:30 p.m. We were in Lucas's room, sitting on the floor, our faces lit up by the glow of the TV as we played Dead Space on his Xbox. The room smelled like pizza grease and Mountain Dew, and outside, the wind had started to pick up. That's when we heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Barely audible over the game. I frowned and looked toward the window. Lucas lived on the second floor. There was no way someone could be knocking from the outside. Danny paused the game. "Did you hear that?" Lucas rolled his eyes. "It's probably Jake messing with us." We waited. Silence. Lucas went back to the game, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it was louder. Danny stood up. "Dude, that's not Jake." Lucas sighed, annoyed, and walked over to the window. He yanked back the curtain. Nothing, just dark trees swaying in the wind. Lucas tapped the glass. "See, it's the wind." But I wasn't convinced. The knocks were too deliberate, too slow. And then Danny whispered, "Check the closet." The words sent a cold shiver down my spine. I turned and looked toward the closet in the corner of Lucas's room. The door was slightly open. Had it been like that earlier? I couldn't remember. Lucas groaned. "Dude, it's just my closet." Danny's voice was low. "Then close it." Lucas rolled his eyes but walked over, grabbing the wooden handle. As he reached for it, the power went out. The room plunged into darkness, and that's when we heard it. A sound. A deep, slow inhale, like something inside the closet was breathing, right next to us. I froze. The room was dead silent, except for our shaky breathing and the faint creaks of the old house settling. Then, the closet door creaked open. Not fast, not violently, slowly, deliberately. Lucas stumbled back, his flashlight shaking in his hands. Nope, not doing this. Danny grabbed my arm so tightly it hurt. The beam of Lucas's flashlight hit the closet. It was empty, or at least, it looked empty. The only thing inside was an old coat rack with a couple of jackets hanging off it. Nothing else. Lucas let out a nervous laugh. "See? You guys are freaking out over nothing." Then we heard Jake scream from downstairs. Lucas bolted for the hallway, with me and Danny right behind him. Jake was older, stronger, and never scared of anything. If he was screaming like that, something was seriously wrong. We sprinted down the stairs into the darkened living room. "Jake!" Lucas called. No answer. Then we heard whispers, soft, raspy whispers, and they were coming from the basement. Danny grabbed my arm. "Dude, don't go down there." But Lucas was already moving. He reached the basement door and put his ear against it. From the other side, there was a single knock. Knock. Lucas took a step back. "Jake?" Silence. Then, the door burst open on its own, and standing at the bottom of the stairs was Jake. But something was wrong. He stood perfectly still, his head tilted to the side. His arms hung limply at his sides. His mouth was slightly open, like he had been frozen mid-sentence. "Jake?" Lucas whispered. Jake's mouth moved. No sound came out. Then, he turned and walked deeper into the basement. And something else followed him. Something tall, something with unnaturally long fingers. We didn't hesitate. We slammed the door shut and locked it. We ran back upstairs and barricaded ourselves in Lucas's room. Danny grabbed his phone. "I'm calling 911. Lucas shook his head. "Dude, what do we even say? That Jake just walked into the basement with some thing?" Danny ignored him and dialed, but the call wouldn't go through. "No service?" Danny muttered. I checked my phone. Same thing. Then, the knocking started again. Not from the window, not from the closet, from the basement door downstairs. A slow, steady knock, knock, knock. Then came the voice. Jake's voice. But wrong. "Lucas, open the door!" The doorknob jiggled. Then the voice changed. It was still Jake's, but it stretched, becoming something inhuman. "Lucas!" "Danny, open the door!" And then the voice laughed, a low, guttural, inhuman laugh. The knocking stopped. The doorknob stopped moving. Silence. We didn't sleep that night. And in the morning, we found Jake asleep in his bed. He had no memory of the night before, but the basement door was still wide open, and on the floor was a perfectly human-looking mask made of skin. Story 2. The Man in the Vents. The night it happened, we were supposed to be alone. It was Michael's birthday sleepover, and his parents had gone out for the night, trusting that 5 13-year-olds could handle themselves for a few hours. Michael's house was massive, a 2-story mansion on the edge of town, the kind of house with too many rooms, too many hallways, and too many places for something to hide. I remember the way it smelled, like fresh popcorn and pizza grease, the air thick with the heat from the oven. There were 5 of us: me, Nate, Michael, the birthday boy, Josh, the smart one, always skeptical, Tyler, the reckless one, always daring us to do something stupid, Eric, quiet, but with the worst luck out of all of us. The plan was simple: stay up all night, eat as much junk food as possible, watch horror movies, and scare the crap out of each other. It should have been just another sleepover, but someone else was already inside the house, watching, waiting. We were 2 movies in when we heard it, a sound, faint at first, like breathing. At first, I thought I imagined it, maybe just white noise from the TV. But then I saw Josh shiver. He turned his head slightly, his brow furrowed. "Did you hear that?" Michael paused the movie, and we all sat there, silent, listening. For a few seconds, nothing. Then, from somewhere above us, a slow, wheezing inhale, then an exhale. I felt my stomach drop. It sounded like it was coming from the air vent. The 5 of us sat frozen. Michael's house had huge air vents, the kind you could crawl through if you were small enough. One was right above us, on the ceiling near the far corner of the room. The breathing had stopped, but I could feel something wrong in the air, like we weren't alone. Tyler stood up, grabbing a foam dart gun from the floor. "I'm gonna check it out." I grabbed his arm. "Dude, don't." He just grinned. "What, you think there's a monster up there?" He aimed the dart gun and fired a foam bullet at the vent. The dart bounced off the metal grate and landed on the floor. Nothing happened. Tyler scoffed. "See? You guys are wimps." He climbed onto Michael's desk, standing directly beneath the vent. "Hello!" he called, knocking on the metal. And then he froze. His face drained of color, his eyes widened in pure horror. "What?" Michael asked. Tyler didn't answer at first. Then, in the quietest shaking whisper, he said, "There's an eye in the vent." We all lost it. Michael jumped up. Eric grabbed a lamp. Josh muttered, "Nope, nope, nope," over and over. Tyler leapt down from the desk, his face pale as a ghost. "I'm not joking," he hissed. "Someone's in the vents." The room fell silent. Then, a sound. A soft scraping, like nails dragging along metal. The air vent shifted slightly, and then something moved inside. I saw the metal grate bulge outward as if someone was pressing against it from the inside. Michael sprinted to the door and locked it. "Holy shit, what do we do?" Josh whispered. "Call 911. Michael grabbed his phone. No service. None of us had service. Then, from somewhere in the walls, we heard crawling, slow, skittering, like something dragging itself through the narrow air ducts. And then, from the hallway outside, a thud, like something dropping down from a vent. We all stared at the door. Josh whispered, "There's more than one vent in the house." We barely breathed. Something was out there, in the hallway. Michael held his breath and pressed his ear against the door. For a few seconds, silence. Then, soft footsteps, coming closer. Then a voice, low, not quite human. "I know you're in there." Tyler covered his mouth, his body shaking. Michael's doorknob jiggled. Eric made a choked sound, stepping backward. The door rattled harder, as if someone was testing it. The voice spoke again. "Come out, I won't hurt you." A pause. And then, in a voice that sounded exactly like Michael's mother, "Michael, sweetie, open the door." Michael went rigid. His parents weren't home. The thing outside the door knew his mother's voice. I don't know who moved first. One second we were paralyzed with fear. The next, we ran for the window. Michael yanked it open. We didn't think, we didn't hesitate, we jumped. The drop was painful. We landed in the bushes, scraping our arms and legs. But we ran, sprinting through Michael's backyard, straight to the neighbor's house, pounding on the door, screaming for help. By the time the police arrived, Michael's house was empty. No sign of anyone, no sign of a break-in. But in the attic, they found the crawlspace entrance wide open. Inside, food wrappers, dirty blankets, and a knife. Someone had been living in the vents, watching us, waiting. We never found out who. But sometimes, when I lie in bed at night, I imagine him still there, crawling through someone else's house, watching, waiting, breathing. Story 3. The Thing in the Woods. Some memories fade over time. This one never has. It's been 10 years, but I still remember everything. The cold night air, the sound of leaves crunching underfoot, the low laughter of my friends as we huddled together under the stars. I also remember the other sound, the one that shouldn't have been there. It happened the summer before 8th grade. My best friend Ethan had invited me and 2 others, Connor and Ryan, to a sleepover at his family's lake house. Ethan's parents were cool. They had gone out for a late dinner, leaving us alone with a fully stocked fridge, a big screen TV, and the endless forest behind their house. We had planned it all out. Stay up all night, eat as much junk food as humanly possible, sneak out to the woods at midnight to tell ghost stories. It was supposed to be just another fun night, but something else was waiting for us in the woods, something that never left. At 11:45 p.m., Ethan turned to us, a smirk on his face. "All right," he said. "You guys ready?" We knew what he meant. We grabbed flashlights, a bag of Twinkies, and a couple of sleeping bags, not to actually sleep out there, just to sit on. The woods behind Ethan's house were massive. His family's lake house was isolated, surrounded by nothing but trees and empty land for miles. Once we passed the tree line, the air changed. It got colder, heavier. I don't know why, but I felt uneasy, like we weren't alone. We walked for about 10 minutes, deep enough that the house's lights disappeared behind us. "This is good," Ethan said. We set up in a small clearing, the ground covered in soft dirt and dead leaves. Connor laid out the sleeping bags. Ethan set up the flashlight in the center like a campfire. And then we started telling stories. For a while, everything was normal, until we saw the light in the trees. At first I thought it was a flashlight, a faint yellowish glow flickering through the trees about 50 feet away. The others saw it too. "What the hell?" Ryan whispered. The light swayed like an old-fashioned lantern swinging back and forth. The way it moved, it wasn't random, it was too smooth, too deliberate. "Is someone out here?" Connor asked, his voice tense. We all went silent. Then we heard it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Soft, measured footsteps coming toward us. Then the light vanished, and so did the footsteps. The forest was silent again. But it wasn't a normal silence. No crickets, no wind, no rustling leaves. Just empty, suffocating stillness. Like the whole forest was holding its breath. We sat there, frozen. "Someone's messing with us," Ethan whispered. Connor shook his head, his grip tightening on his flashlight. "Dude, that wasn't normal." I swallowed hard. I didn't want to admit it, but something felt wrong. We waited, listened. Then, a twig snapped. This time, it was behind us. We whipped around, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. Nothing, just trees and shadows. Connor stood up slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "We should go back." Ethan nodded. We grabbed our stuff as fast as we could, moving back toward the house. But then, we heard the footsteps again. And this time, they were running toward us. I didn't think, I just ran. The others did too. Branches whipped at my face as we tore through the forest, our flashlights bouncing wildly. I could hear something behind us, not running, not chasing, just following. A slow, heavy gait, moving too smoothly through the trees. I risked a glance back, and that's when I saw it. Tall, too tall. A shadow between the trees, its limbs too long, too thin. I didn't see its face, but I felt it looking at me, watching, studying. I nearly tripped, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The house was ahead of us now, its porch light a tiny beacon of safety. We burst through the back door, slamming it shut behind us, panting, shaking. But it was over, right? Wrong. Because outside, just beyond the tree line, we saw it, standing perfectly still, its twisted body silhouetted against the night sky, watching, waiting. And then it grinned. We barely spoke. We sat in the living room, still shaking, staring at the back door. Then, from the other side of the glass, we heard scraping, like fingernails on wood. And then, a voice, low, hollow. Ethan. Ethan's breath hitched. Connor went pale. It knew his name. And then, in a voice that sounded exactly like Ethan's mom, "Ethan, sweetie, open the door." His parents weren't home. We lost it. Lights flooded the driveway, sirens, the cops. The scraping stopped. By the time the police searched the woods, it was gone. Ethan's family moved out the next summer. The house sat empty for years. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it whispering right outside my window. "Come back to the woods.